The anticipation for Karoline Leavitt's appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert had been simmering for weeks. The youngest White House press secretary in history, 27 years old, with a Gen Z style and absolute loyalty to Donald Trump, Leavitt is not just the face of a conservative administration, she's the center of controversy. Trump had just begun his second term, facing criticism for banning AP and Reuters from cabinet meetings, imposing tariffs on Canada and the Russia-Ukraine deal. Every time Leavitt went on air, she stirred the pot, from her statement "Canada is on its knees" to turning the White House TikTok into a viral sensation. She's been accused of being Trump's puppet, using her youthful appearance to mask the administration's failures. Colbert, never one to shy away from confrontation, had vowed to expose her. This interview, more than ever, is a fight for survival. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The applause had barely faded when Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the Late Show stage, her blonde hair gleaming under the lights, dressed in dark attire with a touch of Gen Z flair, an oversized jacket and white sneakers. A confident smile played on her lips, but her eyes were sharp as a blade, ready to face Stephen Colbert. The audience clapped enthusiastically, mixed with boos from those who disliked the Trump administration. She gave a brief wave, sat down in the chair opposite Colbert, her posture relaxed yet unmistakably alert. Colbert leaned forward, his signature half-smile in place. "Karoline, welcome to the show," he said, his tone friendly but his eyes betraying his intent. 27 years old, the youngest press secretary in history. Pretty impressive. But I have to ask, does working for Donald Trump always feel like babysitting someone who won't grow up? Laughter erupted from the audience, with a few whistles of approval. Leavitt let out a light chuckle, unfazed. "Thanks for the welcome, Stephen," she replied, her voice calm but cutting. "But no, I don't babysit anyone. I work with the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He's saving America, and I'm just here to get that message out." Colbert raised an eyebrow, not letting her off easily. "GOAT, huh? Interesting. But speaking of saving America, last week you said Canada is on its knees, when Trump slapped tariffs on them. Do you think that's a good way to build neighborly relations, or just a way to flex muscle?" He crossed his arms, waiting, as the audience fell silent, watching. Leavitt tilted her head, her smile unchanged. "Stephen, you want to talk economics, right? Look at the numbers. Canada relies on us more than we need them. Tariffs are leverage, and it's working. Trump knows how to play tough, and I'm here to tell the truth. We win, they lose. No cap." Scattered applause rose from one corner of the audience, but there were also murmurs of dissent. Colbert nodded, as if agreeing, but then quickly pivoted. "All right, no cap. I like that Gen Z vibe of yours. But about truth, Karoline, what's going on with the press? Your administration banned AP and Reuters from cabinet meetings last month. Is that how Trump wins? By silencing those who ask questions?" His tone sharpened, eyes locked on her, clearly pushing her into a corner. Leavitt didn't blink. She sat up straighter, gesturing lightly for emphasis. "Stephen, don't overplay it. We're not silencing anyone. AP and Reuters were cut because they don't report honestly, they push an anti-Trump narrative instead of facts. Americans don't trust old media like you anymore, and we filter who gets in to make sure the message reaches the right people. That's not silencing, that's a vibe check for the press." She paused, staring straight at Colbert. "Ever heard of something called trust? We're rebuilding it." Colbert laughed, but it wasn't a relaxed laugh. "A vibe check for the press? Sounds like a fancy way to say controlling the narrative. You know, Karoline, press freedom is the backbone of America, not something for Trump and you to filter like a TikTok guest list." The audience roared with laughter, some clapping in agreement. He leaned closer. "You say Americans don't trust the media, but do they trust a government that picks who gets to speak and who doesn't?" Leavitt smiled, but this time it was a challenging smile. "Stephen, you stuck in 1990 or something. Americans trust us because they see results, jobs, economy, peace. Trump doesn't need old media to prove it, and neither do I. We've got X, TikTok, and my 728,000 followers to talk straight to them. You want to call that control? I call it cutting out the outdated middleman." She crossed her arms, eyes blazing. "If you want to talk freedom, Ask why media like you keep pushing one-sided stories. The air in the Late Show studio started thickening like smoke, the applause and boos from the audience blending into a chaotic symphony. Stephen Colbert, still sporting his half-smile but with eyes now sharp as a blade, didn't take them off Karoline Leavitt. She sat across from him, legs crossed, hands resting lightly on her lap, her expression calm but her gaze equally fiery. Colbert tapped the desk lightly, leaning forward like a fighter about to land a knockout punch. Karoline, you just said cutting out the outdated middleman. I get your point. But let's dig deeper into this press thing, he said, his tone even but loaded with intent. You say AP and Reuters aren't honest, so they're banned from cabinet meetings. Do you think that's how a transparent government works? Or is it a sign of a White House trying to muzzle anyone bold enough to ask questions? The audience went quiet for a split second, awaiting her response. Leavitt tilted her head, a smirk creeping up as if she'd seen the punch coming. Stephen, you trying to paint me as the bad guy, huh? She started, her voice soft but sharp as a razor. I'll clear it up for you and everyone here. We're not muzzling anyone. AP and Reuters aren't banned for asking questions. They're banned because they don't report, they spin stories. They push an anti-Trump narrative, twisting facts to fit their angle. Americans aren't stupid, they see it. We're just saying if you want in the room, play fair. That's not control, that's putting the people above old media like you. Applause erupted from one corner of the audience, loud and firm, but the boos from the other side were just as fierce. Colbert raised an eyebrow, clearly unsatisfied with her answer. Play fair, he echoed, his voice rising slightly, laced with sarcasm. Karoline, you just called the world's biggest news outlets dishonest, then said your administration, not exactly known for transparency, gets to judge the truth. Don't you see the contradiction? Press freedom isn't something the White House filters like an Instagram friends list. The audience burst into laughter, a few whistles of approval ringing out. He crossed his arms, staring at her with a challenging look. Leavitt didn't flinch. She sat up straighter, gesturing naturally as if addressing a TikTok crowd. Stephen, you want to talk contradictions? Look at yourself. You sit here making money off mocking people, then pretend to be freedom's guardian. I grew up in a middle-class family in New Hampshire. No politics, no privilege. My parents sold ice cream and used trucks to raise me. I know what Americans want more than some ivory tower news outlets or a millionaire host like you. We banned AP and Reuters not to hide, but to protect the truth from being twisted. Trump's working for the people, not for you guys. Her voice was steady, her gaze sweeping the audience like she was reeling them in. The applause rang out again. Louder this time, but the murmurs of dissent weren't quiet either. Colbert laughed, but it was a dry, humorless laugh. Oh, I love how you tell it, Karoline. Real touching. But you didn't answer the question. If Trump's so transparent, why not let the press do their job? Why pick who gets in and who doesn't? Sounds like a government scared of being exposed more than protecting the truth. He paused, letting the words sink in, as the audience clapped sporadically, some nodding in agreement. Leavitt smiled, but it was a defiant smile, unshaken. Stephen, you're trying to steer this, but I'm not letting you. We're not scared of exposure, we're scared of wasting time with people who don't care about the truth. Do you know how many Americans have ditched old media? They don't watch TV news anymore. They're on X, TikTok, where we talk straight to them. I've got 728,000 followers on X, not because I make stuff up, but because I'm real. If you want transparency, ask why media like you keep pushing one-sided stories instead of letting people decide for themselves. She crossed her arms, her gaze locked on Colbert, as if saying, what else you got? Colbert shook his head, his faint smile tightening into a straight line, talking straight to them on TikTok. Karoline, you're turning the White House into a social media channel, but I guess that's the Gen Z way, dodging questions by posting dance videos. The audience laughed louder, some clapping in support. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You say you're real, but I see someone justifying choking the press by blaming the press. What kind of logic is that? Leavitt didn't waver. She let out a light laugh, but her eyes held no humor. Stephen, you just said I dance on TikTok. No cap, I've never done that. But if I did, I'd still outdo you. As for logic, here's mine. Old media like you lost America's trust long ago. We're not choking the press, we're replacing it with something better, more direct. Trump doesn't need you guys to tell people who he is, and neither do I. If you want to question me, go ahead, but don't expect me to play by your script. She paused, staring right at him, her eyes blazing like an unquenchable flame. The Late Show studio now felt like an arena, the air so thick the audience could feel every breath. The applause and boos still echoed, but silence fell as Stephen Colbert leaned forward, hands braced on the desk, his gaze locked on Karoline Leavitt. His mocking smile was gone, replaced by a stern, almost angry expression. "Karoline, I've heard enough about your TikTok and real talk," he said, his voice low but sharp as the keenest blade. "You say you're changing the world, but I see it differently. You're not just press secretary, you're complicit in undermining American democracy. You're selling out the younger generation, turning Gen Z into a tool for a man trying to strangle freedom just to cling to power. What do you say to that?" The words hit like a bomb, the audience gasping, a few shocked cries mixing with scattered applause from the liberal side. Leavitt sat still for a moment, her eyes hardening, but then her lips curved into a cold, dangerous smile. She crossed her arms, tilting her head as if weighing every word from Colbert. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, all eyes on her. "Stephen, you just called me complicit in undermining democracy," she began, her voice soft but carrying a storm ready to break. "You dare say I'm selling out Gen Z? All right, I'll give you a dose of real talk you'll never forget. You're the hypocrite, sitting in your millionaire ivory tower, pretending to care about democracy while profiting off dividing this country. Trump saved America from the mess people like you left behind, and I'm here to defend him, not to please outdated MCs like you." Applause exploded from the conservative side, loud enough to drown out the liberal boos. A man in the front row shouted, "Karoline's right," while the person next to him stood, raising a hand in protest. Leavitt didn't stop, gesturing like she was live streaming, her eyes ablaze. "You want to talk democracy? Look at yourself. Every night you pick who gets laughed at, who gets mocked, who's the villain in your script. I grew up in New Hampshire. My parents worked their hands raw to raise me, no privilege like you. I know what Gen Z wants, a strong country, not manipulated by old media like you. Trump delivers that, and I'm proud to stand with him. You call that selling out? I call it winning. No cap." Her voice rang out, firm and unyielding. Colbert leaned back, tapping the desk, clearly caught off guard by the ferocity of her response. But he didn't back down. "Winning?" he echoed, his tone sarcastic yet determined. "Karoline, you're good at talking real, but I'm not talking about how you grew up or what Trump does. I'm talking about you. You stand behind that White House podium, justifying banning the press, pushing divisive policies, and turning politics into a social media game. You think Gen Z wants a country where freedom's traded for tariffs and TikTok. You're helping Trump build a regime, not a democracy." He paused, his eyes flashing like a fighter landing a final blow. The audience clapped louder, some standing, whistles of approval ringing out. Leavitt laughed, but this time it was a cold, almost scornful laugh. She sat up straighter, gesturing like she was driving home every word. "Stephen, you just called Trump a regime. You really think I'll sit here and let you paint me as a traitor? I'm not building a regime, I'm building a future. Gen Z doesn't want your fake moral lectures. They want jobs, security, a country that doesn't kneel to anyone. Trump ends wars, brings jobs back, and I'm here to tell that truth. You say I'm undermining democracy. No, I'm tearing down the rotten system you're part of, a system that's failed Americans for ages." She paused, her gaze locked on Colbert, daring him to strike again. In that moment, a memory flashed in Leavitt's mind, July 2024, when she gave birth to her son, in a tough delivery. Just days after Trump's near assassination in Pennsylvania, she'd returned to work right away, standing by Trump when he needed her most. That loyalty, that pressure, now fueled the fire in every word she spoke. "I'm a mother, Stephen," she continued, her voice dropping but stronger than ever. I do this not just for Trump, but for my son, for his generation. You don't get that, because all you do is sit here and laugh. But I don't back down, never. The studio erupted. Applause from the conservative side thundered, drowning out the liberal boos. A group in the middle rows stood, cheering, while others shook their heads, muttering dissent. Colbert leaned back, hands off the desk, his eyes flickering with unease, but quickly regaining composure. A mother, huh? He said, his voice low, tinged with sarcasm. I respect that, Karoline, but don't use your kid to justify helping Trump strangle freedom. You say you're tearing down the system? I see you tearing down what makes America, and Gen Z will pay for it. He leaned closer, eyes blazing with resolve. Are you sure you're building a future, or just burning it? Leavitt didn't blink. She smiled, but it was a cold, razor-sharp smile. Stephen, you want to play the emotion card with me? I'm sure, because I see results every day. Americans see jobs, see peace, see a country that doesn't bow. You say I'm burning the future? No, I'm burning the outdated past you cling to. Gen Z isn't paying, they're leading, and I'm their voice. You want to accuse me? Go ahead, but don't expect me to apologize for winning. She crossed her arms, her eyes blazing like an unextinguishable flame. The studio broke loose. Applause and boos merged into an unprecedented storm of sound. A woman screamed, "Karoline's the queen," while the person beside her stood raising a hand in protest. Stephen Colbert leaned back, his eyes now a mix of confusion and determination to regain control. Karoline Leavitt, facing him, stayed poised, arms crossed, her fiery gaze as intense as ever. Her cold smile lingered, a wordless challenge. Colbert took a deep breath, leaning forward, his voice low but loaded. Karoline, you talk a lot about winning and building a future, he began, so let's talk about a specific Trump win you're proud of. The Russia deal to end the Ukraine war. You call it peace, but plenty call it a cave-in. You think bowing to Putin is how to make America great. The question landed like a heavy stone, the audience hushing for a moment, awaiting her reply. Leavitt tilted her head, a smirk creeping up as if she'd anticipated the blow. Stephen, you just said Trump bowed to Putin, she replied, her voice soft but sharp as a razor. No cap, you're dead wrong. We didn't cave, we brought peace. Trump sat down with Russia, negotiated like a real leader, and now Ukraine's no longer a battlefield. You call that bowing. I call it winning, winning for America, winning for the world. You want the war to drag on just so media like you have something to criticize. She gestured lightly, her eyes sweeping the audience, as if pulling them to her side. Applause erupted from the conservative side, loud and resolute, but the boos from the liberal side were just as fierce. A man in the middle row shouted, "Peace is real," before being drowned out by murmurs of dissent. Colbert shook his head, a faint smile returning, but this time it was the smile of someone gearing up for a counterattack. "Peace is real. I like how you put that, Karoline," he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. "But look closely. Russia still holds Crimea, Ukraine lost land, and Putin's grinning on TV. Whose victory is that? Not America's, certainly not Ukraine's. You say Trump negotiated like a leader, but I see a guy who let Russia win without firing a shot. Don't you find that worrying?" He crossed his arms, his gaze challenging, the audience clapping sporadically, some nodding in agreement. Leavitt let out a light laugh, but it wasn't a cheerful one, it was a laugh of disdain. She sat up straighter, gesturing like she was emphasizing every word. "Stephen, you're trying to paint the picture you want, but I'm not letting you do that. Trump didn't let Russia win, he ended a war. You guys just sat back and griped about Crimea, Ukraine. That was a mess before Trump came back, and he fixed it by bringing everyone to the table. You want America to send troops, spend taxpayers' money to keep fighting. No, we chose peace, and that's what Americans want. Got any data proving people hate this deal, or do you just like telling horror stories?" Her voice was firm, her eyes locked on Colbert. Colbert nodded, as if agreeing, but a new spark of determination flashed in his eyes. "Horror stories? No, Karoline, I'm just stating the truth you don't want to hear," he replied, his voice rising slightly. I don't need data to know caving to a guy like Putin is a sign of weakness, not strength. You say Americans want peace, sure, but they also want an America that doesn't kneel to anyone. You just said Canada's on its knees when Trump hit them with tariffs. Now you claim Russia didn't win when Trump caved. Where's your logic? He paused, letting the question hang, the audience clapping louder, whistles of approval ringing out. Leavitt didn't blink. She smiled, but it was a cold, sharp smile. Stephen, you want to play the logic game with me? Fine, Canada's on its knees because we're stronger economically. That's leverage, and it works. Russia and Ukraine are different. Trump didn't cave, he's smarter than you guys. He knew endless fighting solves nothing, so he negotiated to stop the bloodshed. That's not weakness, it's strategy. You want to call it kneeling? I call it leading. You cling to the past while we're moving forward, with X, TikTok, and my 728,000 followers to prove it. She crossed her arms, her eyes blazing, as if daring Colbert to strike again. The studio erupted again, applause from the conservative side overpowering the liberal boos. A woman in the front row raised her hand and yelled, "Trump's smart," while the person next to her shook their head, muttering dissent. Colbert leaned back, tapping the desk, clearly unhappy with her answer. "Leading?" he echoed, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "Sounds like a fancy way to justify letting Putin off the hook. But I guess that's your style, turning everything into a social media win. You say you're moving forward, but I see someone hiding behind TikTok instead of facing reality." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Are you sure Americans want peace by letting enemies laugh in our face?" Leavitt didn't flinch. She laughed, gesturing like she was live streaming. "Stephen, you keep clinging to your enemies laughing in our face narrative, but I'm not buying it. Americans want peace and Trump delivered, not by kneeling, but by playing tough. You say I'm hiding behind TikTok? No, I'm facing you right here, and I'm winning on every platform because I'm real. You want reality? Reality is the war's over, jobs are back, and America's stronger than ever. You don't like it? Too bad, we don't need your approval." Colbert took a deep breath, leaning forward, his voice low but sharp as a knife. "Karoline, you say you don't need my approval, and I respect that confidence," he began. "But I've got one last question for you, straight up. You're the youngest press secretary in history, but do you ever think you're just Trump's puppet, a young face for him to hide behind when things fall apart? Because I see someone who talks a good game, but has no mind of her own." The question landed like a final punch, the audience gasping. A few scattered claps from the liberal side ringing out. Leavitt sat still for a moment, her eyes hardening, but then she laughed, not a gentle laugh, but a bold, defiant one that echoed through the studio. She gestured, sitting up straighter, her gaze locked on Colbert. "Stephen, you just called me a puppet," she replied, her voice low but thundering. "No cap, that's the lowest blow you could throw, and I'm not letting you off easy. I'm not a puppet, I'm the voice of Trump, of Gen Z, of millions of Americans you and the old media abandoned. I've got my own mind, and it says America needs a leader like Trump, not ivory tower MCs like you. You think I'm hiding him? No, I'm standing here right in your face defending what he's built." Her voice rang out, firm and unyielding. Applause exploded from the conservative side, loud enough to drown out the liberal boos. A man in the front row shouted, "Karoline's real," while the person next to him shook their head, muttering dissent. Leavitt didn't stop, leaning forward, her eyes ablaze. "You think I've got no mind of my own, because I'm loyal to Trump? Wrong. I'm loyal because I believe in him, believe in the jobs, peace, strength he brings. I grew up in a middle-class family, no privilege, no one pulling my strings. I chose this path, and I'm proud of it. You want to call that a puppet? I call it strength. Strength you can't cancel." The studio erupted. Conservative applause thundered like a storm. A group in the middle rows standing, cheering. The liberal boos weren't quiet, but they were overwhelmed by the fervor of Leavitt's supporters. Colbert leaned back, hands off the desk, his eyes flickering with unease but quickly regaining composure. "Strength," he echoed, his tone sarcastic. "I see someone good at justifying, Karoline. But if you're so proud, why not answer straight when Trump's wrong? Do you ever say no to him? Or do you just nod and post a TikTok? He smirked, his eyes flashing, trying to corner her one last time. The audience clapped sporadically, some nodding in agreement. Leavitt smiled, but it was a cold, razor-sharp smile. "Stephen, you want me to say no to Trump to prove I'm not a puppet? That's a cheap trick, and I'm not playing. When Trump's wrong, I work with him to fix it. But he's rarely wrong because he knows what Americans need. I'm not here to nod or dance, I'm here to tell the truth. Gen Z and Trump are shaping the future, and you can't cancel us no matter how hard you try. You want a final answer? Here it is, we win, you lose. Deal with it." She paused, her eyes blazing like an unquenchable flame. The studio went wild. Conservative applause roared loud enough to shake the floor, a woman in the front row yelling, "Karoline's the queen," as liberal boos were completely drowned out. Leavitt stood, waving confidently to the audience, her blonde hair glinting under the lights. She turned to Colbert, nodding slightly as if to say, "That's that." Colbert leaned back, tapping the desk one last time, a forced smile flickering on his lips. "Deal with it, huh?" he muttered, his voice low. "Thanks, Karoline, it's been an interesting night. We'll take a commercial break." He faced the camera, trying to stay composed, but his eyes betrayed his frustration. The audience stayed electric as Leavitt left the stage, her strides proud, white sneakers clicking with every firm step. The camera followed her, capturing her blazing eyes and confident smile as she headed backstage. Colbert sat back, taking a deep breath, looking at the audience with a face that was half defeat, half forced calm. "All right, folks, we'll be back in a few minutes," he said, his voice slightly off. The studio still buzzed with the aftermath of the showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Stephen Colbert. As the audience filed out, some clapped non-stop, others grumbled in discontent, but no one could deny this was a TV battle for the ages. Within minutes, social media exploded. The hashtag #Karoline fires back shot to the top of X's trending list, with tens of thousands of posts from both sides. Conservatives hailed Leavitt as a Gen Z hero, one user writing, "Karoline just crushed Colbert. Trump's got the ultimate spokesperson." Meanwhile, liberals fired back hard, a standout post reading, "She's Trump's mouthpiece, nothing more." Colbert tried, but you can't beat that arrogance. Clips from the interview spread across TikTok and YouTube, racking up millions of views in hours. The press jumped into the fray. Fox News ran the headline, "Young Press Secretary Takes Down Colbert in TV Showdown," praising Leavitt as the new face of conservative politics. CNN countered with an analysis, "Leavitt embodies Trump admin's arrogance. No answers, just attacks." Some neutral commentators dubbed it a Gen Z win in politics, highlighting how Leavitt used social media and modern flair to dominate Colbert. Others warned, "She's turning the White House into a media game. That's not sustainable." Love her or hate her, everyone agreed. Leavitt left an indelible mark that night. Backstage, Leavitt didn't rest. Just 30 minutes after stepping off stage, she posted on X, "Vibe check for Colbert. He tried and failed. Gen Z and Trump don't back down. No cap." The post got over 100,000 likes in an hour, cementing her image as an unyielding fighter. Her walking off in white sneakers, eyes proud, became an online icon. Some turned it into a meme, adding the line, "Deal with it," she'd thrown at Colbert's face. Leavitt, with her Gen Z style and loyalty to Trump, had cemented her status, using Colbert as a springboard to send a message. This administration doesn't play by the old rules. The battle was over, but its echoes would linger, shaping the narrative of a rising young conservative generation. The story of the clash between Karoline Leavitt and Stephen Colbert mirrors the stark political and media polarization in the U.S. today, where traditional values collide with the younger generation's push for change. With Trump in his second term and Leavitt using TikTok and X to defend policies like press bans and tariffs, it shows how social media is reshaping how Americans communicate and argue. Leavitt's verbal sparring, from countering Colbert's undermining democracy accusation with "Trump saved America" to her ex-post "Vibe check for Colbert," reflects the deep divide between conservatives and liberals, a reality alive in debates over free speech, media's role, and tech's impact in the US of 2025. Her resilience, citing her middle-class roots and motherhood to connect with viewers, also hints at how Americans today seek personal authenticity amid public criticism. The takeaway here is, in a polarized society, confidence and adaptability to new tech are key to overcoming pressure. Leavitt didn't back down from Colbert but used her Gen Z flair to turn the tables. A reminder that whether at work or in personal life, you've got to tell your story your way, not let others define you. Take a page from Leavitt when cornered. Don't just defend, strike back with your truth, whether it's through an X post or a face-to-face talk. In America today, where every opinion gets dissected, winning isn't just about being right, it's about making people listen. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss epic drama like Karoline and Colbert's showdown. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video, where we'll keep vibe checking what's hot in America.